Get one thought on every game with NFL Insider KC Joyner. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. But first, all right, we had an ugly one here in town. The Eagles lose to the Giants, and everybody is split. I don't know that people are split. I think that people, maybe they are split. I don't know. We have the poll question up. A lot of people are blaming Doug Peterson, play calling. You got a percentage of people going after Wentz. When you watch Wentz and the Eagles and Peterson, how do you kind of explain on what's happening with this Eagles offense? Is it play calling? Is it the quarterback? Is it a combination? Is there one guy that gets more blame than the other? Do they share the blame? Help us out.
I'll use an old school story here on this one. Back in '81, Joe Gibbs takes over the Washington team, and Joe Theismann is the quarterback. They start off 0-5. Gibbs is going to bench Theismann. Theismann knows this after the loss. The evening after the fifth loss, that very night, Sunday night, he goes to Gibbs' house, knocks on his door, talks to him, and says, I know you need me to be a different type of quarterback. I want to be the type of quarterback you want me to be. And then from there, they win 8-3 the rest of the year. They win the Super Bowl the next year. They go to the next year's Super Bowl. I mean, they became an entirely different team when Theismann said, I'm going to be your guy. I think that Carson Wentz wants to be Brett Favre. He wants to be that type of quarterback. And look, Peterson played with Favre, so he understands the value of that type of skill set, but he also knows that in today's day and age, you can't be that much of a risk taker. And Wentz just has not said, I'm going to be the type of quarterback you want me to be. I think that it's on Wentz's shoes, and he needs to be the type of quarterback that Peterson wants him to be, and he's fighting it, and that's what's causing the problem.
So, I mean, we look back, and we're battling back and forth all day here. I'm thinking, look, do I think Peterson can do a better job, call better plays for Wentz? Sure. But the plays that he is calling, 80% of the quarterbacks in this league are completing some of these passes, and it might not look big now, but he's completing 58%. If he's just completing 4 or 5 more passes, maybe they result in first downs. Maybe they extend the drives more, and that results in some more points, and that makes you go from winning to losing. But does it seem that Peterson has lost confidence in his quarterback, in his play calling? The way he's calling plays, is it suggesting that Peterson now doesn't trust his quarterback?
It does. Wentz has no interceptions yesterday, but the Eagles only threw 6 deep passes. They were 0 for 6 on those passes. I think that Peterson is scaling back the offense. He says, I can't trust him to throw a lot of vertical passes. I'm not going to call them. And then at times when they are calling them, and the rare times they're not even getting complete. Giants only threw 4 deep passes yesterday, but they completed all 4 for 122 yards. So they were getting 30 yards a clip when they were completing their deep passes, and the Eagles didn't complete any. And, yeah, I do think Peterson is to the point where I just can't trust him to take a lot of risky passes, so I've got to scale back what I'm calling because he is going to take too many chances. And you just can't call plays like that. You've got to be on the same sort of page. And I think that really falls on Wentz because he's trying to be the type of quarterback. He should know, I've got a coach who's won a Super Bowl without me at quarterback. And coach can do this. I need to adopt his system because right now Peterson, I think that's why he's as frustrated as he is because he can't be the type of play caller he wants to be with Wentz playing like he is.
Okay, so we've had this conversation. If Wentz has regressed, is it fair to ask, has Peterson regressed?
The thing is if the quarterback, I think about it from a play caller's perspective. If the quarterback isn't doing the things that you want him to do as a play caller, you naturally are going to regress as a play caller because your playbook is getting smaller and smaller. The things that you can do, the ways that you can attack a defense are more limited. So I don't think it's the play caller and Doug Peterson that's not doing a good job anymore. I think he's perfectly capable of that. I think it's the motivator or the what do I need to do to get Carson Wentz to play at a different level. But I still think that is more on Wentz than it is on Peterson. Because Peterson shouldn't have to push Wentz to adopt his system. Wentz should see this guy's won a Super Bowl without me at quarterback, and I need to adopt his system. And Wentz just isn't. He still wants to be that Brett Favre type, and I just think he's got to change his mindset.
Okay, when you see Wentz, what are some of the issues he's having? Is it footwork? Is it mechanical? Is it between the ears? I mean, some would suggest that this is on Peterson because he's not coaching Wentz hard enough.
He's a fastball. The fastball pitchers like to throw fastballs. They like to do that. One of the things that coaches have learned over years, defensive coaches have learned over years, that if you make quarterbacks who want to be fastball pitchers, who want to be gunslingers and take a lot of chances, if you're patient with them and you say, okay, we'll give you dink and dunk throws, and we'll sit here and play you deep coverage. Eventually, those quarterbacks will get frustrated and throw the deeper passes. That's what I think it is with Wentz, that Wentz is just, he wants to be like, okay, I want to do more playground football. I want to take more of these chances downfield. And that's where I keep coming back to this, but it's where he wants to be more of a risk taker than he is. If you put Wentz in an offense 15 years ago, when interception rates around the league were high, when Brett Favre was at his peak, if you were put him in that type of offense back then and he was throwing the picks he is today, he could get by with it because you could let him take more chances. But the way interception rates have dropped around the league, coaches and quarterbacks around the league are very good at keeping interception rates exceptionally low. You just can't have a quarterback who throws one pick a game, and that's what Wentz is, and he has to get away from that to take that one risky pass. Until he does that, this offense and this team just aren't going to be where they need to be.
Well, it's wild. I mean, we were just talking about his last, from 2017, 18, 19, his numbers were pretty streamlined across, very comparable. His completion percentage, his interception, he threw 7 interceptions for 3 straight years, and then all of a sudden an NFL quarterback under 58%. I mean, he's not a playable guy at this point, and you wonder why have the numbers just dropped off so drastically after he had a 3 or 4 year window where everything was pretty comparable.
A big part of it, I think, has to do with there are some quarterbacks, like take Phillip Rivers. You look at what he did with the Chargers over the years. They would have constant changes in the receivers. Yeah, he'd have Gates and such. He'd have some guys he could go with, but he would be getting these fantastic numbers out of these third-rate players. You'd look and go, how in the world are you getting those kind of numbers out of those guys? Because he was a guy who could deal with that type of personnel chaos and handle it very well. You could do Andrew Luck did that with Indianapolis. I mean, you've had different quarterbacks who are capable of doing that. I think Wentz is a guy who needs more stability around him. When he doesn't have that stability around him, then he thinks, I have to do everything. I can't trust my guys to do this. I have to do everything. He just has to have that personnel stability. I don't know if that's something you can coach to make him more comfortable with less personnel stability, but I think that's a big part of it. He keeps seeing the players change around him. He just thinks, okay, this is one man. This is like basketball. I'm going to turn this into a one-man game. In football, you can't do that.
KC Joyner, NFL Insider at footballscientist.com. We'll look at one thought on every game. I do want to ask you, you look back at Wentz and you see that yards per completion number, and I mean, he's under 6 yards of completion. What's the story there?
It's a vertical passing. You can't. On short passes, the top guy in the league will usually average 7.5, maybe in big years, 8 yards per attempt. Short passes are usually going to be around 6 and change per attempt. So the only way you can stockpile yards completion, yards per attempt numbers is to get more vertical completions. If you don't have many of them, you're just not going to spike that number. So it all comes down to it. You can't go 0 for 6 like you did yesterday in deep passes and have a good yards per attempt total.
All right. At this point, how can Doug Peterson help him? I mean, some of this is on Peterson. How can he help him?
I think they need to come down to a point to where maybe Peterson needs to say, look, I know you want to take some risky passes downfield. I'm going to incorporate some of those into the game. And then, in fact, I remember one time Bill Parcells once told Phil Simms, he thought Phil Simms wasn't being aggressive enough. So he told him at one point, he said, I'm going to put in a particular point in the game, he said, I'm going to call this play. I want you to throw it. I don't even care if it's intercepted. I want you to be more aggressive. I think Peterson maybe needs to tell Wentz, look, you're trying to be aggressive all the time. I'll give you opportunities to be aggressive, and you go be the type of quarterback you want to be on those plays. The rest of the plays, you play the game the way I need you to play the game. If they can find some sort of a middle ground there, then I think I could turn things around.
All right, KC Joyner, one thought on every game, and let's start with that one there. The Giants beat the Eagles. When you look at the NFC East now, who's the top dog?
The Giants are actually playing the best football out of that division. I mean, you talked Gettleman saying that we're the best 2-7 team in league history. I mean, who cares? You're 2-7, but he is right. They are playing much better, and all bounce or two going a different way. That'd be a 4-6 or a 5-5 team. So right now, they are playing the best in the division. If they can continue to play at that level, they'll win it.
It should be a very wild ride down the stretch here. Teams with 3 wins fighting for the division 11 weeks into the season. Oh, boy. Let's get one thought on every game this week with KC Joyner. Here we go. Houston and Cleveland, 10-7. Ugly game, but that gets Cleveland to 6 wins. Of course, they've got Philly coming up next. But do we take Cleveland serious as a playoff team?
We do now. This is a big difference for them. Every other win that they had, they'd scored 32 or more points. They hadn't shown that they could win a low-scoring game. To be able to do that against a Houston team that still has a pretty solid offense, that's a big plus for that team. So Cleveland showed that they turned over a new leaf yesterday.
Detroit didn't seem like they wanted to win the game, but Washington wanted to win it less.
They did. And the Lions, I mean, they get out to a big lead, and then, of course, they lose the lead as expected. But then, hey, Chase Young making that foolish play to set up that field goal. That's Washington not playing smart football. If they would have played smart football, they'd probably get that win.
Jacksonville gave a nice fight to Green Bay, but Green Bay, these are the kind of games, like, you got to find ugly ways to beat bad teams sometimes. It's a nice win, like a character win for Green Bay.
It is. They Tomlined yesterday. They played down to the competition level, didn't take the game very seriously, and to be able to win like that, we were talking last week that teams of destiny, when they get in games like that, they will find ways to win those contests. So that, it's a very big win for the Packers to show they could win when they didn't play their best.
Tampa beats Carolina. Brady has a big day, 341. Big day for Ronald Jones. He had that 98-yard run. Carolina feels like a team that's getting close to being a good team. It seems like they got something, but not enough for Tampa.
They just miss CMC so much. I mean, Davis finally has been running out of gas. They just can't. He's not that back. So when they get him back in offense, it'll be better. Tampa, though, I could not understand. They've got one bad game, and I've got fantasy managers and other people asking, "My gosh, the Bucs are done." I'm like, really? This is Tom Brady. Haven't you learned to not underestimate this guy? Don't do that. He's going to bounce back, and they did big. So I mean, the Bucs are still a powerhouse team.
All right, Las Vegas, big win over Denver. They look good in doing so there. Josh Jacobs was back, had a nice day there. But I guess same question as Cleveland. Do we start to look at Vegas as a playoff team?
They're a very good team. I don't know that they're in the upper echelon. This seems like a team that will get to the divisional round of the playoffs, and if they luck out there, they seem like what Tennessee was last year, a team that if they get to the conference championship, they're going to, they possibly have a chance, but this is just a team that needs a little bit more. But based on what the Raiders have been in past years, I mean, this is really good because now they're playing John Gruden power football, and long-term, that's going to be a big plus for them.
This Dolphins team continues to win. They get one against the Chargers, and the Dolphins, I guess, would be in the same boat as Cleveland and Vegas. Are they a playoff team?
They absolutely are a very good team. That defense is superb. We saw they're the first team to hold Herbert down to really limit his production and such. And their ground game, even though they've had so many injuries, they're still finding a way to get moving on the ground. And Tua is playing quite well. I think they'll make the playoffs this year, and in 2021, this is going to be a team you're really going to have to contend with.
All right, Arizona, all of a sudden, I mean, you don't have to wonder about them anymore. They're at the top of the division. They get a surprise Hail Mary victory over Buffalo. Buffalo, a good team. Do we start to look at Arizona a little differently now?
We do look at Arizona a little differently to get this sort of win. This is one of those where this could be the turn of the season for both teams, because Arizona getting a win in a game that they probably should have lost, and then Buffalo losing a game they probably should have won. But it says something for Buffalo, too. They keep getting in these shootout games. You can't get into them and keep winning. You've got to find a way to win another way, and they were getting better at that. And yesterday they couldn't, so it's still getting an Achilles heel for them.
And what's it say about Seattle, who loses to the Rams? What's it say about the Rams, who that division now is wide open up for grabs? And I think we maybe changed our thoughts on who the favorite is.
The Rams, I was looking at them the past couple of weeks. I was doing some breakdowns on them, and their defense is superb. I didn't expect them to hold Seattle to 16 points, but not surprising to see them to hold Seattle in check. Seattle was starting to lose the shootout games, and now they don't have the kind of defense to keep up with the Rams. And because the Rams had that good of a defense, this is a Super Bowl contender. This is a better Rams team than the one that went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
They beat Seattle 23-16, third straight loss for the Seahawks. New Orleans wins, but they might have lost their quarterback. We'll see. They were the top dog, and they still are in the NFC, but without Drew Brees, do we still look at them the same?
They're not the top. They won't be a top team in the conference, but the Saints are doing a better job than any other team in the league at getting production out of every facet of their roster. They literally almost use every one of the 53 on game day. They find ways to incorporate them in the offense and the defense. When you can get that much production at that much depth, you can absorb an injury like this. But the thing is, can you do it for a long run in the playoffs? Because Jameis Winston's not a guy who's going to win 3 playoff games if they ever had to lean on him.
All right, and then, of course, last night might have been, let's go to Pittsburgh first. They dominate Cincinnati.
They do, and they didn't Tomlin, and they played hard the entire game, and Roethlisberger comes back with no practice and has the kind of game that he does. I mean, a lot of it's because Cincinnati had 3 missing cornerbacks in their secondary by the time the second quarter rolled around. So I think it says a lot for what Cincinnati's defense is. But Pittsburgh, for them to play at that level against a subpar team, it speaks well. But let's see how they play next week against Jacksonville, because they could Tomlin again that night.
All right, and then the night game last night, a big surprise. New England says, hey, we're going to just go power football and run it right down your throats. They beat Baltimore. What's it say about both these teams, really? I mean, I think people were out on the Patriots, and now Baltimore maybe you look at a little differently.
Power football always does well. If you can do power football well, you can always win a certain volume of games. And Baltimore can play power football on offense. They can't pass. I mean, Jackson finally, this is only, I think, the third game this year, second or third game this year where they had more than 200 net passing yards, but they just can't pass the ball. And if you're a one-dimensional team going up against a Belichick offense or Belichick game plan, that's not going to fare well for you a lot of times. So I think it says more for where Baltimore is, that they need to find other ways to win because they're just not getting kind of passing production they need, and it's a big limitation for them.
All right, then tonight we've got Minnesota and Chicago right here on 97.3 ESPN. I guess both these teams are still in it. If Minnesota wins, they'd be 4-5. That keeps them kind of in the mix. And then Chicago, of course, they need this one. They would be 6-4 with a win. How do you see it?
I think Chicago, even though they're that level in the division, where first and last place in the division, I think Minnesota's playing a lot better. Won 3 of the last 5, and I mean they've run for 448 yards in the past 2 weeks, and they've had 3 games of 200 or more rushing yards this year. I don't think they'll get 200 or more against Chicago, but Minnesota's playing the type of ball that it likes to play, and it can control the game that way. And Chicago's probably going to have a Lamar Miller to lean on in their backfield, and I think that Minnesota just has enough big play potential on their offense to win this game.
All right, that's tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. One thought, every game is back on Friday as the Eagles get ready for the Browns. An ugly Eagles effort again. They lose to the Giants, but still in first place in the NFC East. The Giants with 3 wins and 7 losses have cut the gap. It should be a wild finish in this NFC East, and KC Joyner will be back on Friday to break it down. One thought, every game, go to thefootballscientist.com to check out more from KC Joyner. Thanks, pal.
Appreciate it, Mike.